start talking to you. Taking stock.
In Bose? You buying Bose stock?
No,
You should.
they don't have stock that we can get anyway.
I don't know. They don't sell stock?
It's a privately held company. That's exactly right. And most of their profits go right back into R&D. And that's why they create what they do, is they don't have to answer to shareholders.
Not most. All.
What did I say? Thank you for doing what you've done so far for the conference. I think everybody is giving as much as they're getting. Definitely feeling it from everybody. It's not what Ashland was. It's not what Big Sur was. I wasn't at St. Louis, but I don't sense it's what St. Louis was. But it's its own thing, and it's going well. So, can everyone hear me all right? And I don't know about these speakers. I haven't quite made up my mind about them. So.
You put a cavern on that?
I have nothing on. Listen to this nice reverb in this room. It's a little muddy. This room's a little muddy. I'm trying to, I'll get into that. I'm crisping up my voice without the treble so you can hear me better. All right, well, I'm embarrassed to even start this way, but Ken made a post one time, and I don't remember, I actually found it again the other day. I don't know if it was a reference to Big Sur or what it was, but he had the gall to say that I had the best voice in guitar he'd ever heard live. And exactly, that's the way I felt. I said, okay, so now where do I go?
Best voice and guitar sound.
Sound, yes, thank you. That would be obvious. There are so many people that are so talented that I will never even approach.
Best tone.
Thank you, thank you. And what I'm trying to get at without being too self-conscious is that's not an accident. Any of you that have been playing for years and years, if you're good at it, and my motto is if you don't continuously improve, then quit doing what you're doing. If you're good at it, you know how to take what is good average tone and make it into excellent tone. And the way that you do that is a combination of listening and experimenting. If you go to the gig time after time and do the same thing, never do anything about the way you sound, don't improve, then, I literally quit. There's no point. This is an art. It's a craft. But I'm not here to preach to you. Listening and experimenting. I'm going to say that several times today. That's the key to having great tone vocally or guitar-wise or performance-wise. Everything is about listening, experimenting, getting into those little tiny details that make an average sound excellent. The key to this, of course, is being able to hear yourself. As you know, we have one of the finest systems ever created, not only because of the sound, but because it's right there where I can hear myself. And if anybody wants to interfere with that other than standing in between me and it, they can't. I can hear myself exactly the way I want to hear myself. The way that I developed my tone was not on this, unfortunately, although since I've been on the L1, I've gotten better and better. But it was doing a house gig for 10 years, 5 days and 5 nights and 1 day a week for 10 years. I could hone to the nth degree, and I did, and I enjoyed honing everything about the way I played the guitar, about the way I sang. That's the way you become excellent. And I know, yes, I have that benefit of all that experience, but I'm going to share that with you. And if you are willing to listen and experiment, you can get really great tone too. Anyone that thinks my tone sucks right now? Thank you. Let's get that out of the way, because if you think it's not good right now, then let's correct it.
No, I think it's worth noting that there is an element of subjectivity when we're talking about tone.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody has their own idea of tone. But I think we all can agree when we hear something that's really good. And then I was going to go over that a lot. And I thought, well, let's just go where we're going. It is subjective. Everybody has their own idea of what great tone is. But I'm going to get into some things that'll go along with the color management, especially if we talk about great photographers like an Ansel Adams. They got everything from pitch black to stark white in his own system and everything in between. And that's kind of what I try to do when I play and sing. So I'm going to talk about vocal tone, then I'm going to talk about guitar tone, then I'm going to talk about how it relates to performing technique. And hopefully I won't go an hour, and we'll do some questions afterwards. You obviously aren't afraid to interrupt me if you got some questions. So Just be aware of 3.5 hours of sleep. If I go on a tangent, I may never come back. And that might be okay. So, vocal tone. We went over this with a couple different guys on the forum. There's a lot of disagreement about how you create great vocal tone. I'm from the school that it comes from having a good amount of air. Whether that's natural air or whether that's forced air, or you're intentionally getting more air than you normally would to breathe, we can argue about that. For me, I try to get more air than I would normally have if I'm just sitting and talking or going about my day. So first thing is, get some air. If you don't have a lot of air, here's what it's going to sound like. Okay, this is a very shallow breath. My voice, I don't have anywhere to come from. I'm feeling tension in my throat. And I'm getting this tone that is more nasal and is not pleasing to me anyway. Now let's get some air, all right? A little more air. I'm opening up, I'm loosening. I took a little deeper breath. I can force it to even get a bigger sound where I'm really loose and I'm really feeling it resonate all the way down into my diaphragm, into my gut, all the way up through my chest. That's a little false for speaking unless I'm trying to do a voiceover that's a DJ kind of thing. But I'm concentrating on getting just enough air to create this open tone. And I don't want to feel tension in my throat. If I do that, I'm not going to last the whole night vocally. And any singer that's sang long enough knows there are certain nights when you just feel horrible. And if you think about it, when you're feeling horrible, it's because your throat is dry. One, I always keep water and remember to swallow. That's the biggest thing when I'm doing something. If I forget to swallow, I get so dried out anyway. And the second thing is, it's just the tension is transferred up into here, and you get this, you even get tension where you feel it in your neck, and you're just, you feel all closed off. All right. The second thing, in addition to getting air, is good diction, good consonants, especially ending consonants on your words. When you're singing, yes, you're on a microphone, and it's much more than being on a stage. If any of you have ever done theater, they tell you or talk to the old lady in the last row whose hearing aid battery just died. So you project. So you speak like this, and you intentionally put much more emphasis on everything you do when you're doing stage work. Even, I ended that word with a K. I said, and I purposely put this, if I did that on a mic, I'm going to wind up with something that's so over-exaggerated that, we're not going to do that. But you still want to get those ending consonants especially, and even the plosive beginning consonants. And one of the biggest things to that is distance on the mic. And some mics are better at this than others, but if I put the mic away from me and say a P, 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 as I get up, it changes, and you engineers can tell more about the physics of why this does it. But as I get up closer, it's going to go away. P, 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 P. It's gone. Plosive consonant's gone. Put your lips on the windscreen if you're getting that problem. When you hear people speak on a hotel system, and they're, this far off the mic, and there's no windscreen or anything to keep them from popping it, every plosive consonant, and that's what you call a T or a B or a P, those come through. For years I sang on a little condenser microphones, those little Audio Technicas that were on the lawn. I thought they looked cool and had a little foam screen. Every time I said a P, I had to P, T, S, P. And I got to where I did it unconsciously, and it was wonderful. I got a great sound, but if somebody else got up on it, boom, it was horrible. And some of you, been around long enough to have used really bad mics without good windscreens. Yes?
That goes for talking about songs, and I even think rock stars do this. They mumble about stuff, and they say these little obscure things that are probably pretty interesting. I think that if you're going to say something, you should talk just like you talk. So many people do it, entertainers do that. They mumble about
and even with this system, they assume because they can hear themselves that the audience can hear what they're saying. And so they'll just, so did you all hear about that joke that, and it was the other, and they're moving around, and they're talking fast. If you're going to say something, get on the mic, use your consonants, use your diction, purposely say the end of every word, make it count. The song is there for you to communicate to the audience. If they don't understand the words, unless that's the point of the song, you totally lost them. And get on the mic. If you're moving like this, it's gone. If you want to turn your head to look at people in the audience, swivel on the mic. You pivot like this. All right? you pivot. No matter what you're doing, you're always right on that mic, and you stay with it. Now, there's another thing, and this is a subjective thing, and some folks will not like what I'm saying about this, but Cliff demonstrated it. As soon as I get off this mic, even if I turn up the level, my tone is now very nasally. It's not pleasing. And I know a lot of people use the technique of getting off the mic, and some people to very good effect when they scream, and some people have dynamics that they cannot control. It's just part of the way they sing, and they get way off the mic. Be aware when you do that, your tone is totally changing, and it may be very unpleasing. In fact, if I scream at you, if I sing something, start spreading the news, well, that's loud, and it may have distorted the channel, but it's actually better than start spreading the news. Hear that horrible tone? And you hear that with church singers, and I feel for the sound man, where the singer is holding it way down here, and they're trying to get a tone that's pleasing. I've got to imagine the bass is boosted way the heck up, and the mids are way down, and it's just a mess. We've got something here that we can get a good tone with lips on the screen. If you have to use the limiter in the T1, which is wonderful, I did sound last week where this gal was just screaming. Crank that limiter up, bring her down. You know, if you have to do that, it's better to stay on the screen, use the limiter, than it is to get off and change your tone and lose also your intelligibility, because when you get off the mic and you start turning left and right instead of pivoting, you start losing that intelligibility. Yeah, go ahead,
I
Ken.
have a question for you and then for the audience. Question for you, are you using a compressor right now?
No compression. You want to hear the compression?
No, I just wanted to know.
Okay, no, I'm boosting the bass a tiny bit on the Neumann 105 preset. Otherwise, all effects are off, everything else is...
And then for the audience, I just have a quick question because I'm really interested in this question. When you work the microphone by backing off of the microphone, are you doing that because you need a volume control for your voice, or are you doing it because something is happening tonally that you like?
I do it because of volume. I have an incredibly dynamic...
Okay, volume? Volume. So, the tone change is an unwanted byproduct of the need to use distance as a volume control.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, the compressor will make up for some of those things. If you use the compressor, it beefs up your tone. Here's the compression on. And it also helps your volume a little as you get off and move a little. It's going to boost up things. But also, if you're somebody that is not good about your settings right, and you get off it, you're going to get feedback horrible with a compressor. So, and if you're with a loud band and you have to blast, the compressor is going to squash you. And if you're depending on it to get your levels right with your bandmates, they're going to sing over the top of you because you're going to be limited to this certain level by the compressor. Man, everybody wants to say. Cliff, go ahead, you were first.
I have two comments. One, there's basically two kinds of vocal mics, hypercardioid and cardioid. You've got a hypercardioid, very sensitive to proximity. A much more forgiving mic is a cardioid, like
58.
I don't think the 535 is a hypercardioid. You think it is, just by what you're hearing, or do you know that?
An OM5 is a hypercardioid.
No, this is an AKG 535 condenser.
The other comment is that compression does not improve intelligibility. Intelligibility really basically, the more dynamic range you have, if you can use it.
Yeah, you're right. What I was trying to get at was as you get off the mic, you can still maintain some of that intelligibility because the compressor will bring up the level a little bit. Kyle?
Yeah, two questions. Number one, we're seeing you straight on. How far when you're backing off the mic, trying to give us these demonstrations, are you backing off of it? Okay.
Not this far. When I really screamed, when I was doing that piece of whatever it was, the Sinatra tune, I was about that far off, that foot more.
And then, well, just, go on.
Sure.
We probably get to this, but just in case, I just want to put it in the brain. The notion of volume control when using the mic.
Yes, and that's exactly the next thing. Well, that 10-year house gig that I had was a restaurant gig, and you can't scream, and you have to learn to control your dynamics. And if you have to go for a high note, you have to learn to sing in your head voice or falsetto and make it convincing. And that's something I learned that has really helped me to eat the mic. So when I go for a high note, I won't go, yeah! I'll go, yeah! Well, my voice is shot from no sleep, but I'll find a way, yeah, to get it out. And in fact, sometimes I'll turn on the compressor and I'll purposely go to falsetto even though it's quiet, knowing that I can hit that note and it'll be nice and rich. So it is a vocal style, it is a choice. My choice is I want to eat the mic because I know the tone I get all the time, and I want to find whatever I have to do to my voice to do it. Now some people, absolutely, that's your style and there's no way you're ever going to get around it, but be aware as you back off that mic, your tone totally changes and you can't, you know, it's going to get harsh, and it's harsh because you're shouting anyway, and combine that with the fact that now the mic is not working with that preset, it could get, you know, the point where it's unpleasing to the audience, and that's our whole point. Please the audience, make the song, you know, as crisp and clear, and make those lyrics as, you know, as understandable as possible, because that's the point of your song, unless it's not. You're doing scat, you're doing whatever, do whatever you want to do, make your voice sound like it wants, but if you're trying to deliver lyrics, do it. Anybody else? Okay. Now I want to demonstrate a little bit about, back to that idea of where you breathe and where you place things, and I may try to do kind of a little experiment here with you too. The shape of your mouth and the shape of your throat has a lot to do with the amount of resonance and the way your voice sounds. One of my voice teachers used to tell us to imagine you had a pear in your mouth with the big part at the back of your mouth and the small part at the front of your mouth. Well, let's imagine there's a tennis ball. I mean, that you can actually swallow a tennis ball. Feel it in the front of your mouth and then go all the way down your throat. And I want you to get this feeling, and if you have to close your eyes to get the feeling of it, and don't gag on me, feel what it feels like in your own mind, in your own throat, as first it's open at the front and not open anywhere else, and then start to move it back into the back of your throat, and then on down and all through, and eventually, if you can do it and feel it down here in your gut. If you can feel that feeling and you can train your muscles to recognize that, then it's much easier to control that tone. And this is the richness factor. The crispness is more the diction, but the richness is more as it moves down your throat. And feel that. You know, if we need to, I'll have everybody go, you know, front of the mouth, into the throat. Well, it's not coming through because to close off, I end up losing that openness. But do you understand? Is this making any sense to people? You don't want to force it. You don't want to feel tension in where you're forcing that opening. And in fact, you'll feel more relaxed is the farther you put it back, because you won't get that tension in your throat and that vein standing out that make that horrible tone, in my opinion, that so many singers have when they start to get that tensed up. You know, if you're doing metal, that's fine, but you still want to get good tone, and you don't want to trash your voice by tensing up to the point where you know, trash those vocal cords. Is this making sense? Is anybody feeling like this is valuable to the kind of music they do? Chris, help you with your singing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Since you were nodding yes, okay. So, the other thing, and this is something that great singers know intuitively. We were talking, who was I talking with earlier? We were talking about these singers, oh, it was with Pete. We were talking about these singers that in the bad old days, before we all had monitors even on the old, you know, systems, that somebody would get up on your system with a piece of, you know, you all had horrible mic sound that night and you knew it. And somebody, either one of your own people or somebody got up to guest, you know, and do a song. And even though they had no monitor, they got this fantastic sound out of the mains. And you're thinking, how in the world can they know and change their voice when they can't even really hear themselves? Well, it's because they know that this microphone is an instrument. And different microphones have a huge difference in their response, not only because they're a dynamic or a cardioid, and I won't get into my theories on the differences and how the mics produce. I know a condenser is easier for me. A condenser is much more forgiving for the style I do. I'm going to switch over to a 58 so you can hear the difference, and I'm not going to change my voice at all. I'm just going to keep talking, and this is like what Larry did in Ashland. And I told Larry I was going to point it out. Larry unconsciously, and this is what people that really do listen and experiment, both on their instrument and their vocal, he unconsciously changed his voice as he switched from mic to mic. The first couple words he said sounded foreign, and then suddenly he warmed up to it and it sounded great. It's because he not only listened to experiment, but he also knew the microphone was an instrument. I mean, the way this thing responds, it responds just like an instrument does. It has different frequency characteristics and different ways it responds to the pressure, the sound pressure, you know, on the element. So I'm going to keep talking the way I'm talking on this AKG 535 and switch right over to the 58, and you're going to hear that it's not a very pleasing sound. Now I'm going to actually purposely open up my throat, get a little bigger voice, and I'm going to purposely over-enunciate so that you hear more highs. This is on a 58 preset, but I'm able to actually take this mic and still get a very pleasing sound out of it, even beyond the preset, because I'm opening up more, I'm listening. I'm listening and going, I don't want this nasally tone that sounded so good on this mic. Instead, I want a little bigger tone, and I'm not hearing the crisp highs, so I'm going to go ahead and, you know, purposely put a T instead of saying T like on this one. T sounds fine. On this mic, I've got a T. I've got to really force that consonant so it sounds nice and crisp. Does this make sense? Have you all experienced this? The great people intuitively can change their voice and make it sound fantastic. I hate 58s, but if I have to be on one, I know what I can do to make my voice sound good on it. Now right now I just stopped paying attention for a split second and it got a little muddier. Did you pick up on that? Are you hearing the detail I'm hearing? This is very, very, very fine detail, and because of this system we can hear it for the first time. I'm get off this thing because I don't like 58s. It's a dinosaur to me. There's so many great microphones. Now, did you hear how I kind of had to change my tone, and I'm still changing as I speak to you, as I listen, and it gets better. And that's what Larry did out in Ashland, unknowingly, because he's played for so many years that he can make any system sound good and any microphone sound good. But if you concentrate on these, you know, these little tips I'm giving you, I've had so many people say, and I hate to point you out, Steve, but Steve he said, I got the right preset on, but I just don't like the sound of my voice. And we were using some outboard gear, and some of that was causing some of that, but some of it really is just learning to listen to what you sound like and then experimenting with the openness, the diction, the whole bit until you get this nice, clear, open tone. All right, any questions? That's the end of my vocal presentation. We'll get into the guitar a little. We're going to use some of the same concepts. Yes, go ahead, Larry.
I'm going to contradict a little bit what you say about me.
All right, you have that right.
What did you say?
I believe that I do things intuitively, but I think a big part of what I was doing was not changing my voice as much as it was hunting for the sweet spot of the microphone, which utilized the microphone to do what I wanted it to do. And unlike what you're doing now, at that demonstration, I did not speak directly on the screen of the mic. I varied the distance. So I was hunting for the same...
But you were doing it with your distance.
Yes, I was hunting for the same, and I might have been changing the inflection of my voice, but I think mostly I was hunting for the sweet spot of the microphone. And I think that's the reason why I believe that you can use different mics and get the same basic tone, because every one will have a sweet spot.
And that's a good point. If you have to use distance to get the tone in a pinch, but if it's the mic you're using all the time, I still believe work with it till you can do lips on the screen, because that's the best way to not get feedback and the best way to ensure your tone is always the same. Because as we've said on the forum many times, every time you half the distance, you double the volume. So if I back off an inch, there goes my volume. I get back up on it, it comes back. It's that touchy. And if you feel, and you know, if you don't want to use somebody else's microphone because you don't want to pick up germs off the mic thing, you know, you can always, you know, travel with a thing of Purell wipes or whatever you have to do to keep that screen clean, but use that screen, especially with the presets. It's your best friend. Yeah.
Before you go on from vocals, I just got to say, two people whose vocal tone I think a lot of us really respect This is hugely gratifying to the Bose people to hear you guys digging in on this level to talk about this kind of stuff. That's what this is for. So artists will think about it. And I'm hoping anybody else who's wondering about their tone will realize, like Tom said, it's not an accident. This stuff doesn't just happen. There are no silver bullets. These guys have sage words of advice for us all. We really appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah, I was going to bring, when I used to do voice lessons, I'd always get the students saying, I'm never going to sound as good as you. I have recordings from myself in high school when my family used to say, just play and don't sing, where I am so in the nose, in the head, out of tune, horrid. You know, this isn't an accident, it's hard work. And I was not a natural at it, definitely. There's only one other thing. There is something to deal with, and this has to do with the cardioid or hypercardioid. There is a sweet spot on the mic as you move around it too. And our preferred way of using this system is tip 10 to 15 degrees so that it doesn't feed back on the system. If you run your mics like this, you are going to get a different tone speaking right into that element. That's a little different than like this, where I'm speaking kind of into the quarter. Here's the ball of the mic, and instead of speaking right into it, I'm speaking about like this into it. And you can still put it lower and speak straight into it. It's kind of awkward to have your head kind of canted down. But be aware of that too. There is a sweet spot on that mic that you can use. And some microphones, like Don was using an SM87, it has a flat front on it. And you can actually put that flat front right between your lips and feel it all the time and be exactly where you want to be, which is pretty cool. And I don't know, I would actually think that corner that your lip is on, just right there, probably helps the plosive consonants even more too. Any other questions? Cool. All right, let me get the guitar. Hold on a second. I forgot my picks. Do you want? I want to demonstrate this on different picks so you get the idea that it's also not dependent upon what you do with your fingers. Okay. Guitar is absolutely the same thing. Listen and experiment. Electric guitarists know this intuitively because they're searching for that great tone. And a lot of acoustic guys do too. After our song, and it's in a beat tuning. All right. Same thing on the guitar. Boy, really getting some weird rings, aren't I? Turn down the microphone a little on the guitar. Still wondering. Deal with it. Listen and experiment. Whether you're using flat picks, finger, you got, yeah?
What are you using for pickup on the guitar?
You know, I've got a bunch of different choices, and that's going to be one of the things I'm going to do is swap. This one I have a pretty mediocre saddle pickup with no preamp going over a long cord, which is a big no-no. This preamp I don't like the sound of by itself, but mixed with the mic it's real nice. Here's the preamp by itself. It's a pretty average guitar sound. Here's the mic by itself. It's a pretty good tone, but it doesn't. Pretty thin on finger picking.
Feeds back.
Well, but you can work with the feedback though. You can notch, you can do all kinds of things. For some reason, when a mic is with a pickup, it actually is it's more resistant to feedback. I can't explain it, why it works, and we could probably talk about it and figure it out a little better, but it tends to be less feedbacky to me. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody, because I'm really willing to deal with the feedback to get the tone I want. I was demonstrating the Mama Bear last night, and I could demonstrate that again if you're really interested. There are other ways to get the really nice crispness that a mic puts out. This just happens to be this summer. I went back to the mic and the saddle pickup. I'm very happy with a magnetic pickup in the sound hole and a little transducer under the bridge too. That still gives me the combination of the crispness and the roundness I want. But that's a whole other issue. I don't want to even get into all that. Just want to demonstrate a little bit about the fingers and the different ways to get the tone. So, we play with lots of different ways on guitars. Some people play without any picks at all. Some people use a coating on their nails like I do, because I use the back of my nails and I don't want them to wear down to the quick. Some people use a flat pick, some people use finger picks. There's all different ways to get your sound. But if you talk to the greats, they're all, or if you listen to them, they're all able to get a great tone no matter what they're using. And in fact, you can hear them get up on somebody else's guitar, and within a measure or two, they got a cool tone, and they're not tweaking. They're just using a different combination of flesh and nail if they're playing with their fingers, or they're rotating the pick, or they're doing whatever they have to do to get the tone that they want. So, here's flesh and nails. I'm going to first just play something real basic and try to get, let's say, just a bad tone. I'll just kind of pluck it without even paying attention to what I'm doing. I can't do it. My mind is so tuned in to make that sound good instantly that instantly I vary the amount of nail, the amount of flesh. If I'm doing just flesh on my thumb, I get this sound. Whoops, I'm actually rolling. So it's pretty dull. Can you hear that one? Now I'm going to use a little more of the edge where I've got a little more callus. And then I'll add the nail. So I've got all those different tonal things to work with just my thumb. Now let's try a finger on the same note. I'll just do the flesh. Well, my nail's a little too long to not hit the nail. Then I'll go to a little bit more. This is nail alone. That's a pretty dull tone. I'll pivot it just a little so it scrapes along my nail instead of hitting the flat part. Hear that little edge? Here's flat. Here's the edge. You got all these different tones to work with. So as you're playing, listen and tune into that little tiny sweet spot again of where the tone sounds exactly like you want it. And your brain is good enough to automatically hear that for you, and you will play that way. It takes, a lot of practice and experimenting, but eventually, sometimes I overpluck a note because I know when I do that on this guitar, it's going to give me more sweetness. And I like that tone. It sounds very acoustic to me. But I could just as easily make this guitar sound bad, and I could just easily hand it to one of you guitarists and you'd get a completely different tone out of it. My point is, listen, experiment. You've got a lot of capabilities here in your fingers. Okay, now let's switch to a finger pick. Some of you play with finger picks. Some of you might just play with a thumb pick. This is a Herco